Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about a deck which is very near and dear to my heart, and a deck which a lot of people love me to cover on this channel, Chien-Pao, and how it's performing in post-rotation. It's a deck that's kind of got a lot of hype, and definitely is one of the strongest archetypes in post-rotation. But how is it performing right now in Japan? In today's video, we're going to break down exactly what is making Chien-Pao so strong in the Japanese meta right now, leading up to EUIC for Temporal Forces, which is only just a few weeks away. We're also going to break down exactly my thoughts and feelings of the list, the matchup wise, kind of like the plays which you can kind of go around this one, as well as also my final list about where I think Chien-Pao is kind of best suited in the meta. So if we look how it's been doing in Japan, Champions League was a little bit of a surprise. It did get one top 32 and three top 64s. This did come as a surprise because, as you can see, it's a 10% meta share deck in City League Championships. We expected a top 16 result, but we didn't really get that one. Still, I don't think we should argue that it's not a good deck because it did get a top 32 and top 64 in an event that had over 2,600 players. It is one of the third best placing decks over there in Japan right now in the City League Championships by getting 22 wins. It is shy, obviously, below Charizard, which is the most dominant deck, Lugia, and then Lost in Box just behind it. So honestly, it's doing very, very well. It gets better with post-rotation. By getting rid of some of these cards which can clunk up the hand, like Battle VIP Pass, like even Cross Switches in the late game, kind of like consolidating it into much more consistent drawing cards, it makes your mid to late game a lot stronger and better and more streamlined because you have a range of super strong attacking options. You have Chien-Pao, Iron Hands, Greninja, and even the likes of Kyogre from Crown Zenith. It's actually seen Liverpool play to do that in 180 snipe, which honestly is a very good inclusion. So let's kind of look at the current Chien-Pao list, which is won by Owen Karaman just a few weeks ago. And this list here is very, very straightforward. I've played this list. I think it's very, very consistent. And you can see here that when you actually look at what it loses in the post-rotation, it loses only 8 cards, 4 copies of Battle VIP parts and 4 copies of Cross Switcher. Now, if we think about that, getting rid of Battle VIP passes, you can easily switch it out to that Buddy Poffin, which is a good inclusion. You now no longer need to focus on getting your Fidget-Backs and Bidoof as early as turn 1. You can obviously try and prioritize that, but in the late game, it's very much easier to get into it. Instead of you sacrificing your Nest Balls or Ultra Ball, you can use a Buddy Poffin to kind of get those resources. And 4 Cross Switches all of a sudden goes to 1 copy of the Prime Catcher, and you've got 3 extra slots. So that's a very, very good inclusion. So I want to now look at one of the lists that is doing well in Japan, one of the things that have done well in City League, and you can see there are, in fact, 3 brand new cards got added to the deck. 4 copies of Buddy Poffin, 1 Prime Capture, and 2 copies of Cryptomaniac or Codebreaker's Decipher. All of these cards have a really good inclusion, and you can see the list has changed quite a fair bit, going down to 2 Chien-Pao because you don't need that many Chien-Pao right now. You don't need to prioritize to get them out constantly with the likes of Battle VIP Pass, so having only 2 options and really heaving out in the Nest Ball and Ultra Ball is kind of absolutely okay. The Kyogre, like I mentioned, is a very good inclusion in tech. Because a lot of decks are playing Manaphy, you are going to be really reliant on canceling clones to try and go through this one. But doing 180 snipe to a Squawkabilly, to a Luminion, to a Archeops, to any sort of very powerful, heck, even a Baxcalibur, it can do the good maths in numbers. So I generally think this is a kind of a nice inclusion to the deck. A lot of people are playing this one. I think it's a really good inclusion as a secondary attacking option. Personally, in my testing, I've not found it to be as valuable and strong. But if you want to get that quick sniping, it's a very good inclusion. Having Codebreakers, Decipher, or Cryptomaniac, wherever you want to call it, I always forget which way is the correct translation. Honestly, it's a very, very good inclusion because it works well with Greninja, works well with Bibarel, and also works well with Pokestop. You can search your deck for the 2 items you need to have, or that even the Baxcalibur and Rare Candy, or potentially the Water Energy you need to have, or Superior Energy Retrieval for game, or Prime Catcher plus Canceling Clone. There are so many good inclusions for this card to be in it. Not having Iono does mean you're very weak to any hand disruption to your opponent, or potentially just yourself, like to refresh your hand. You're always going to have your hand which is in front of you. But honestly, I didn't find any limitation above Codebreaker. I thought it was such a good inclusion and much necessary card for this deck. Having 1 copy of Prime Catcher is actually very, very strong. Obviously, you can only play 1, it's your ace spec of choice, but it works the deck so well. It unlocks a capability. You can get your Greninja out at least as early as turn 2. It works with your Iron Hands to get out potentially Luminion and also get out that extra 3 prize cards which you might potentially need. Having the Gust effect only be 1 counter catcher and 1 prime catcher, you don't really miss anything like that. In theory, I could potentially add a boss, but there are particular ways which I don't know where I cut, maybe even a Lightning Energy for a boss. But you want to have that item card, you want to have that support. Having having a 1 counter catcher means that if they take a Chien-Pao quite early on, you immediately unlock it and potentially get that big one-hit KO in the late game. The rest of the deck is very straightforward. How we've seen most Chien-Paos, we are seeing the inclusion more of Manaphy, purely on the basis that if Chien-Pao is going to be a 10% meta deck and Greninja can easily be up and running by turn 2, you want to have that protection as much as possible. So, like I said, why is it actually doing so well? Well, number one, there's no path to peak in the deck. Chien-Pao is doing incredibly well because of that, getting rid of that liability. Path to Peak really does have that hindrance. It shuts off Shivery Chill. It shuts off the likes of Concealed Cards. So basically some of your draw engine and getting your energies to help with your consistency of the deck. Having that card not into that one means that you can free up some stadium out, so you're not playing that big 4 if you can go down to 3 and not really rely on being that big ability lock. The deck does feel more streamlined and consistent in the mid to late game. Like I mentioned before, you're getting rid of Battle VIP by doing cross switches. Cross switches need 2 of them to work. Battle VIP only works on turn 1. Getting rid of those cards will only be consistent. Like Buddy Buddy Popping can be played and failed in mid to late game or used for discard fodder for your superior engine retrieval, like Battle VIP did. But if you super rod in, say they've taken 2 Frigid back, you only have 1 left, you can super rod them back in and then instantly get them back in with Buddy Buddy Popping. It works really well for late game and opens up that possibility. Codebreaker is also really good in late game and helps you with that Iridus sort of thing. Yes, Iona is good for that disrupt capability, but that Codebreaker really does help draw into those 2 cards you potentially might need. And it also has a good Charizard and Evolving deck matchup. As we've kind of seen, Charizard is basically a 25% meta deck. Chien-Pao has always had a pretty decent Charizard matchup. I would say it's either favored or slightly favored pretty much the entirety of the run. I do think that the Pidgey build is a lot more favored for you into Charizard because they aren't going to be playing the 100 HP Charmeleons. They're going to be having more of the Pidgeys on the bench, so you will be able to really effectively get them with a Greninja KO. Whereas likes of the Bibarel build, they will always play the 100 HP Charmeleons. They'll always probably play the Manaphy, have that Bibarel as well, so it's less targets for you to really focus on for that Greninja sort of KO. But you can go around it with Iron Hands. That's kind of why the deck is doing so well. It is such a strong archetype going into the metagame. If we just look at a matchup like I mentioned before, you can see it's pretty favored in most things, if not even to most archetypes. I would say Miraidon definitely comes to a lot more favorable matchup. Miraidon definitely was a little bit of a tricky one. They can get Iron Hand stuff out, they can get really powered up, but not having that fluffy in the late game, not having a path to peak really does open up to be a much more better matchup into it. Similar thing with Lost Box and any of the Giratina packaging. You can use Greninja shenanigans, you can play Iron Hand, so you have multiple ways to get these big prizes in multiple turns. I did mention just now about Charizard, about why I think it's a favorable matchup-wise. You can go behind in prizes, which potentially you can go behind, get rid of 1 Chien-Pao. Then all of a sudden you can go Iron Hands for Luminion, and then you can go Chien-Pao for Charizard for the game. All of a sudden, after they've taken 1 prize cut beforehand, you want to go behind a little bit on Charizard so you can punish them with the cross switcher, the prime catcher, as well as the counter catcher. Rest of it matchup I think is pretty even. Goldingo I would say is probably more slightly favored than I thought it was. I did play a few games of Goldingo over the weekend against it, and honestly it worked really well. I think Iron Hand's a really good inclusion. You've got to really respect when they put down the Palkia. If they put Palkia out turn 1, you want to bench the Manaphy because you don't want to be punished by not having Manaphy out there, and they could take easy 2 prize cards. So you want to have that Manaphy out there, but don't put it down straight away. Look at what the opponent has in field. If they are going to be like, oh, I'm just going to put down a Palkia against Goldingo, that's when you put the Manaphy. If they don't put out turn 1, your free backs will stay for at least 1 turn, so you could put that down at potentially turn 2 or 3. The rest of the metagame I think is pretty good. The other beat stick decks like Rory Moon, I think you're pretty favorable into that one as well. Gardevoir as well. They are a lot more single prize Pokemon, but going to have heavily damaged. So Iron Hands can really be capitalized to that one. You play 4 superior entry retrievals and 2 copies of Super Rod, so you can really recycle them as well. Lugia can be a bit tough, but Iron Hands does get a 3 prize KO on a Lugia V, as well as also a Luminion, so it's definitely something to be considerate as well. And also the Iron Hand, the Turbo Iron Hands deck, I kind of put that as the Iron Crown deck, which is pretty much the best way to play Future Box right now. It's definitely a bit of a tough matchup. I would say that one. I would say it's a bit even. It can be a bit tricky, but I would say if you play a Lost Vacuum, it can really push you into a little bit more of a favorable thing. Stop that big Iron Hand, potentially 1 turn can be really good. Definitely its unfavorable matchups are Control. The likes of Donphan, because you're drawing for your deck quite quickly, the Great Tusk Mill can really kind of go for your deck very quickly. Similar like Snorlax Stall. You're going to not really want to bench like the likes of Greninja or even the likes of Manaphy, but they're probably going to get that down, and it's very difficult to get these big 1-hit KOs on Snorlax when they can effectively have 250 HP. That's 5 energies, which is a lot to get onto it, constantly keep in the deck. As well as also Ancient Box. Ancient Box, yes, you can like do some shenanigans, but Iron Hands can't 1-hit KO any of your guys except I think Fluttermane to get 2 prizes, so and Greninja. So again, something to really consider about as well. I think Ancient Fox does have a lot of legs. I think it's 1 or 2 cards away from being perfect. I really like a Romoon EX, which can in fact tip the favor a little bit more into Chien-Pao because it has that 2 prize liability, and you can go Greninja, Roy Moon EX, and then potentially try and get 2 prizes off another one. That's definitely something to go around at one. But I do think that most of the thing, Chien-Pao has a very even to favor spread against most of the deck and really struggles with control. That's really my sort of interpretation and feeling of the deck. So kind of looking ahead, is it a strong pick for EUIC? Right now, it is my favorable deck to play right now. I really, really love it, and the new tech really do help the consistency. Having that Prime Catcher, getting rid of 4 slots of cross switches to go to Prime Catcher just makes the deck so much better, so much more fluid, and kind of getting rid of quite a few of these unnecessary 4-rolls really makes the deck like work a lot stronger. I do think can its favorable Charizard matchup really help up the rest of the metagame? If we're going to EUIC and you're expected to face against, what, 2 or 3 Charizards, or even like potentially even 4 if it's a 25% deck, you kind of are going to be having an okay matchup. As long as you understand how the rest of the matchup goes around, I think Chien-Pao is in such a good favorable one. And this is right now my current build. I know it's a picture version, but I did an amazing testing session over the weekend, and this is the list I played, and it honestly worked super, super well. Having a Lost Vacuum, like I mentioned, does help you against the Iron Hands deck, does help you against lots of the Ancient decks, which does play the Ancient Boost to Capture Energy. Getting rid of that is really good. Hero's Cape, so many good cards to kind of remove it. That's why I think Lost Vacuum is such a good inclusion. 2 Canceling Clone, you could argue go down to 1, but you do play 2 Gusting effects, so kind of like going around that. Having that option so you can go double Greninja in a game is super, super good. 3 Pokestops, because like I said, you don't need 4 of anymore. You can go down to 3. And definitely the rest of the deck is just super, super consistent. And I honestly love this deck so much. I'm really excited to see how it's going to progress in this post-rotation metagame. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Where do you think Chien-Pao really leads up to going into the metagame for EUIC? I'm very, very excited. Right now, this is my top pick for EUIC. I think it's super good, super consistent, has some great matchups for the rest of the board, and doesn't lose much, and is honestly super, super consistent right now. So let me know your thoughts and feelings of the deck. I will see you in a few days' time for another video. Bye for now.